Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, citizens of the world. This is Pastor Dow. I had two things on my mind I wanted to speak about this morning. Number one, protest, and number two, religion. Number one, protest. Now, I want you to think for a moment. I want you to think, and then maybe it'll give you some insight, the reason why I speak and talk the way that I do. You see, I come from a total different perspective than from those of you who live out in the city or those of you who have been influenced by any form of religion, no matter what it be, whatever it may be. Because see, when you live in a city, you have a perspective and you have a way that you think. When you live in the country, you have a different perspective and you have a different way that you think. So there's a lot of you who live in the city, just like I used to, and you've never had the perspective to understand what it means to live in the country, to prepare and get ready. So you're in no position of authority to make any judgments whatsoever at all, and you can't tell me what I shouldn't be doing or should be doing because, see, I've lived in the city and now lived in the country, and I'm living in the country now, or what you call on the outskirts or way outside of any metropolitan city. So I understand what it means. I can give you both perspectives because I've lived in both places. But I want to talk to you also here just for a second briefly about protest. The reason why you see all this civil unrest taking place and the instability going on in all these countries, especially in the Middle East, because there's two things taking place over there. Number one, the United States of America, along with their allies, are trying to get in foothold and get a control of that whole entire territory because of the resources. Africa has been exploited by the Europeans ever since who knows that they first even come down in that particular area. But make no mistake about it. When you're seeing all these civil unrest and all these protests and everything that's going on, it's because, there's a certain people that's trying to get control of that whole entire region over there. And it's never stopped. And you can believe that. Now, as far as you seeing people, teachers protesting or people protesting because of their pensions, protesting because there's not enough food, because the government didn't supply it. The reason why these people are protesting like this is because their God has failed them. Did you hear what I said? Because their God has failed them. But see, when you change your perspective, you change your idea, the way you think and your philosophy, you no longer have to depend on a system that teaches you and that has trained you to be subordinate. You no longer have to depend on a system that has taught you to be dependent and self-servient to them. And become serfs of them when you exercise self-autonomy, independent thinking, and you start developing a life to where you don't have to depend on no government. You don't have to depend on a job for your livelihood because you're making the proper moves that need to be made right now. So you're not going to see Pastor Dow in any metropolitan city marching on the state capitol or anything like that, trying to tell them or trying to press for my rights, because I don't depend on that system for my livelihood. I don't depend on that system for me to live, and neither should you. And that's what my direction is. That's why I'm trying to tell you that you're going to have to change your mind because civil unrest is coming to the United States of America, and it's fast. It's already done started raising up its head, and you see these governments firing upon these citizens out there in these other countries, and they're literally mowing down and shooting them. The same thing is going to take place here in the United States of America. We already have cops on the street who just actually think that they can treat the literal Americans any way they want. And they can and the court systems, because they're all in cahoots, they back them up. So any injustices that they do, you have no recourse because you're dependent on a system that is satanically inspired for justice. And you have to understand that if you're going to get justice, number one, it's going to come from the Most High, and you're going to have to make your own justice. That's the reason why you need your own land. So where you can be the sovereign of that land and where you can actually be in control of your own, quote unquote, destiny. If you understand what I mean. So no, you're not going to see Pastor Dow out there in the middle of the city and stuff protesting I want my pension, I want my 401k, and you can't take my money this, you can't take my money that, and you ain't going to see me out there protesting the banks. You know the reason why you're not going to see me out there protesting the banks? Because I don't have any money in the bank to protest. Are you following me? You see, now my uprising will be if anybody tries to come here and disturb my own personal homestead. That's where we're going to have a serious problem. Now, religion, number two. I want to touch on that. You see, I have been in the Christianity realm. And so therefore, when I talk to you about Christianity and how pagan and satanic it is, I'm talking to you from a position of authority. I've been that route. I understand what it means. And I read the King James Version of the Bible just like a lot of you people say that you do out there, except one thing, I believe it. I live it and I believe it. And I also understand that you can't believe every word that's sitting right there in front of you, but you have to look behind the words. You have to become a student. You have to become a disciple of Christ. You have to really do some deep researching and stuff. You really, truly got to check things out, and you really, truly got to have the Ruach Kadesh or the Holy Spirit to lead and guide you into all this truth. And no doubt, if he's really truly leading and guiding you, no doubt you can see what's going on in the world, then guess what? You're going to be following on this same highway and the same path, the same road that I'm on. So I don't too much fool around with religious folk because you can't do nothing with them. And I know this. I've had my experience with religious people. They think that they have it all figured out, and I'm not going to disturb their happiness. You just better hope that the pastor you're listening to, and you do need to be following some man as he follows Christ, because that's what the early church did. You better hope that he is leading and guiding you the right way. Well, I don't have to listen to no man. I don't know, and you're not, and that's why you're going to perish. You know, all you people out there in your little individual areas, you're thinking that you've got this thing all figured out and stuff, but the Most High ain't never dealt with just individuals in themselves. And you look at the book of Acts, right there, you'll see that the believers were together and they had all things common. You're not going to hear that in a church world out there who teaches everybody to be selfish and self-servient. And they're self-serving to each other. You're not going to hear that out there because they don't want you to hear his philosophy. They don't want you to hear the truth of this word right here and what you need to be doing. They don't want you to hear this because this will bring inspiration to everyone who have already believed this in their heart of hearts anyway. And so that's why your preachers and pastors, they will get mute. If you ever talk to them about me, they're going to become non-responsive because they know what I'm saying is true, or they will give you some crazy far-off mindset or idea of the reason why you can't do it. So I don't fool with religious folks too much. Give me the sinners. Give me the people who are backsliding on Christ, those who know that they should be following him, and they need to hear sound words coming from a sound man who's living what he preaches and not just preaching it and telling you what to do, but who's actually doing it. They need to hear somebody who's actually doing it, who footprint and footsteps, who actually are testifying to what is being said is the truth. So I don't fool around with religion too much. I don't fool around, especially that false, fake, phony religion called Christianity. Now you have to understand, just because I come against Christianity does not mean that I'm coming against Christ. Christianity is a made-up religion that was made up in 325 AD by the Roman Emperor Constantine, but most of you ain't going to know that. You're not going to do it. You're not going to look it up. Just like your false Sunday, sun god, pagan worshiping on Sunday, or your rest day on Sunday. You can't find that in the Bible. Where you come up with that nonsense? It's a false religious tradition of men, and the reason why your pastors and your preachers and teachers can't change because they have too much fear. Number one, they're going to lose their paycheck. Number two, they're going to lose you. Number three, they ain't going to have nobody following them no more because unless they're preaching some watered-down version of the gospel that's easy for you to accept, they don't have any following. So therefore, you don't really truly have disciples of Christ in the first place. So no, I preach to those of you out there who are weighed in the valley of decision, and you want to hear the truth, and not only that, you want to do something about it. And that's who I'm trying to reach. I'm not trying to reach these religious folks you can't do nothing with because you're not going to do nothing with them anyway. They got it all figured out. I know one thing, you just better hope that you do got it all figured out. You better hope that the man of God that you're listening to, the man of the Most High, Yah, you listen to it, lead and guide you in the right way. And I'm going to tell you right now, if any man is not preparing you, especially if they're out here thundering or so-called preaching and teaching about the times that are hard and what's going on, and you still stuck in that city with civil unrest is getting ready to take place, you got something wrong. There's something seriously wrong with your mindset and the way that you think. Most of you are not going to move because if your preacher ain't going to move, you ain't going to move. That's why you need to move away from your preacher because he ain't going to never move. Because people have gotten eased in Zion. They are eased in this country. And they don't have any ambitions whatsoever at all to give you direction to lead you out of this. When Moses was in Mizraim, in the land of Egypt and stuff, that was considered a city. He took his people out into the wilderness, the children of Israel, and there were no Jews and there were no Christians that actually went out into that wilderness. Do you understand? So when you get a preacher like me that's brutally honest, coming from this aspect and viewpoint right here, I can understand why many of you don't want to hear it, because it's not popular. It's not what you want to hear, because you're hoping, just like the people who you're preaching to. It's amazing. You know, let me jump to this real quick. We'll get a revelation. This is what religious people do. They'll get a revelation about some truth, and they've only been walking in it a year or two. And then they'll condemn everybody who doesn't walk in the truth that they have. Isn't that something? And they're novices themselves, and they've only been walking in a year or two. And they never use the compassion of Christ. Look how long it's taken. I will be the first to tell you that what I know today, it has taken a long time for me to get to this point. So I know how to deal with people in their prospective areas of growth. I can have compassion on the multitudes, just like Christ could. So I'm not going to condemn you where you are. So when you hear me giving direction, I'm not condemning. I'm giving you direction in what you need to do. But at the same time, the message is still not going to change. It is still required you to perform righteous. So at least start moving in that direction so that you can have a good, complete understanding. You ain't got too many people talking like me. And that's just the truth. Because they're afraid to tell you the truth and to tell you what needs to be done. And more than anything, they are afraid to be examples of the word themselves. They are afraid to literally become doers of the word. And that's the truth. Oh, and lately I've been getting a lot of Hebrews, so-called Hebrew Israelites emailing me and stuff. I tell you what, when you get out of the city and you start keeping the commandments, and you have humility and honor of spirit, then you start talking to me. Until then, don't even write me, because you're wasting your time. I'm not going to sit up and listen to a bunch of people who look like they just come out of a freak show from the WWF trying to teach me the laws and statutes and commandments. And I've been living this thing for 20-something years, and you still sitting there in that city. That is utter nonsense. You know, Abraham, the father of faith, he left out of his father's house. And he went way out into the wilderness. That's always been the pattern of our people. So no, you ain't going to get in my ear and you still sitting up there in that city. You forget about it. You don't believe what you're preaching. You don't even believe what you said. You're not even moving with fear. So how you expect people supposed to be sitting down listening to you? How you going to wake up people and you out there talking down at them? Now when I preach and teach, I'm giving direction. It'd be one thing if you was speaking and you was preaching and giving direction, but you people are not giving any direction whatsoever at all. None whatsoever at all. Oh yeah, now I reprove, and I rebuke, and I correct, but I'm not about to let somebody who's been walking this thing 2-3 years, know 4-5 scriptures and stuff, and think they got a complete revelation of the end times and what's going on, and presume to think that they're going to instruct me in any way when you're not even living this gospel, this truth, and this word. And that's the truth. And that's the truth straightway.